Well, at least it's over, right? This show is such a relic of a specific bygone era of DCU. The era that honestly sucked, made almost no money, and no one in their right mind would want it back. You know, the Snyder era. Oh yes, the poor man, Nolan's Batman movies. The great time that brought us four of the worst superhero movies of all time, and later one of the most annoying internet movements of all time in release the Snyder Cut. But if this wasn't enough evidence that the movie slash TV division of DC was at their peak of every bad decision possible, they decided to start a streaming platform with original shows and comic books. DC only. Before it obviously bombed, it gave us 6 shows. This is one of them, and I love every single one except for this one. Doom Patrol, amazing. Swamp Thing, good while it lasted. Stargirl is fun. Young Justice is amazing, and Harley Quinn is one of my favorite shows ever. But of course, we have to talk about the Black Sheep, the oldest of the bunch, and easily the worst, so let's just get to it. Let's talk about the overall tone of the show, because it's probably its most distinguishable characteristic. I didn't mention Snyder movies earlier, just because I like to torture myself. I did it because since season 1, this show reeked of the Snyder DC movie aesthetic. Every color had to be dead, characters couldn't act like humans, everything has to be so goddamn serious. Cue the fucking choirs, throw the dark filter, and everybody with me, save Martha! Well, I hated that so much. It made those movies and this show by extension so lifeless and so laughable. It all looked like a self-parody, but because it treated itself so seriously, there was nothing to really laugh about. But now Snyderverse is long dead, but this show not only is still alive, I mean, this is the last season, so it kinda is dead. But it also didn't learn from those movies' demise. Well, at least not fully. Let me explain. For like 85, maybe 90% of the time, it still is the same overly serious, uninteresting bullshit. But for the rest of the time, the creators try to make a normal teen drama superhero show. Characters try to make some jokes, try to have some wit, try to not be more serious than death for all the time. Not saying that they succeeded, but you know they are trying. At first it may seem like a good change, but it somehow makes the show even worse, because it makes it feel like a complete mess. This overly serious tone was a complete pain in my ass, but at least it was consistent. But now, feels like the show doesn't even know what to do with itself. Those more light-hearted moments are kinda a breath of fresh air, but because they are sandwiched in their usual brooding and lack of life, you just ask yourself, why even bother? And they make those Snyder-esque parts seem even worse and even more lifeless. This show seemed like it had no idea what to do with itself, but in season 4, it's especially visible. Well, maybe the characters saved this show in any way? Well, no, of course they don't. This is the worst bunch of characters in the history of TV superheroes. Or any superheroes, probably anywhere. If there is a person that has anything to differentiate these fools, they may be the most powerful being in existence. I mean, seriously, the only difference between them is name, nickname, powers, and age. And that's it. They all act exactly the fucking same. And they are not even the same good character either. They are all the same brooding, sad, boring waste of amazing comic book potential. I mean, seriously, we have 2 good adaptations of Teen Titans in forms of their own TV shows, and most of them are in Young Justice, and you still have no idea why people like them? Not because they are the same horrible character, but as much as I can't see any difference between them, I want to talk about one very specific character, Connor. So Superboy probably was the most survivable playable character in the show until now. Not a good character, but he was just a guy. The only thing special about him is that he wasn't as bad as the rest of them. So he was good because the bar is so low. So what they did with Connor in season 4? Well, they made him the most obnoxious character in this show, obviously. For real, they decided to make him kinda evil for a bit, and it was a complete dread to watch. He was just a prick without any personality, and he was so goddamn annoying. And I feel like this is what defines this show the best. They do the complete opposite of learning from their mistakes. You have something that is at least semi-okay, let's make it horrible, so it would match the rest of the show. You had the same terrible storylines in every season? Well, let's run it back again. Everybody is on a fucking loop, repeating the same storyline over and over again since season 1, and they didn't work in season 1, nor they did in season 2, nor they did in season 3, and it's especially dreadful in season 4, because this is supposed to be the end. At least as a goodbye, try to give us something. But they don't. All they give us is boring and terrible. Well, how about the villain then? This show so far gave us some of the worst villains in history of superhero. But, it's a small but still, at least they all were just that. Villains. A typical bad guy who is bad, and as much as I hated all of them, I appreciated that at least they didn't try to give us misunderstood villain who maybe isn't the bad guy really. Cliché, cause honestly it's so overdone everywhere that I'm honestly kinda done with it. So at least they didn't try the same here, right? Well, no, of course they had to try it in season 4, cause life is pain and I'm here to suffer. Seriously, they did Joker. But somehow even worse and even more basic, they did a misunderstood outcast rejected by society because he is different, who becomes an evil villain that will destroy it all because no one wanted to give him any love. Sound familiar? And it's god awful. He's so poorly written, you can't take any of it seriously. As much as I tried, his acting is so dreadful that you can't even sniff any emotional baggage, and the road to him becoming the villain is so undercooked, it's not even fucking funny. Why would someone allow this group of writers who can't write a character to save their lives to try to do a misunderstood outcast becoming a villain, which is a very difficult cliche to pull off and make you feel for the villain? It honestly feels kinda insulting. Well, let's now get to the crown jewel of this extravaganza, which is the holes in the script and the idiocy. This show always had some dumb character decisions, stupid script mistakes, and just writing sloppiness. I feel like it had more of those in season 3 than seasons 1 and 2, but I'm not saying they didn't had those too. Well, in season 4, there is more of this than ever before by quite a large margin. I feel like in this season, especially in the second half, there is like two contradictions with something said earlier, or characters doing something dumb, or writers completely forgetting about something, or writers even forgetting how time works twice per scene. No, I didn't make a mistake, not twice per episode. Twice per scene. And while normally I forget and forgive about those things quickly if it happens rarely, everybody makes mistakes, right? In this show there is so much of it that sometimes I couldn't focus on anything that happens because I was so focused of how much stupidity I am given. To give you some examples that aren't spoilers, there is at least a few situations that someone can't see a person despite technically looking right at them because they are outside the camera shot, or somebody has a superpower for 2 scenes and it isn't mentioned or used ever again, or characters just sitting around doing nothing for hours in show hours. They say the time when millions of people, yes, millions, either die or may die. It's not really cleared up in the show. Despite the fact they know what, who, where, and how to stop it. And it's just a few random examples I can remember, but trust me, there is so much more. And it kills this show somehow even more because it makes it seem not only like a complete amateur hour, but also like no one cared to make it make sense. Season 4 is not only the same bad show as it was in previous seasons, it's the same bad show that no one seemed to want to work on. I want to shortly mention the dialogues because I don't have much to say except the fact they are basically a worse version of Batman v Superman / Justice League dialogues. So boring, no one talks like humans, cringe a lot of the times, but now they add their own flavor of horrifically unfunny comedy, so do with that what you will. It's horrendous. Let's finish on the cream of the crop of the superhero television shows, which are the fights, and by association the CGI. The fights are probably the best thing in this show. They are just typical low-budget TV fights that are kinda boring, but they won't make you want to remove your eyeballs. Especially they got improved in season 3 and 4, so you know, that's the biggest praise I can give to this show, so that's that. CGI on the other hand is god-awful. It looks like the cheapest fucking show in history. I get that making video effects for a TV budget is very difficult, especially if you want to make it look any good. But I feel like the CGI for the TV shows at least improved a lot in the last few years, where even the cheaper shows have CGI that even it doesn't look like they have the budget to make it look as good as movies, at least it looks interesting, and the holes in the budget video effects people fill it with creativity. Doom Patrol is a great example of that. This show at the same time seems very, very cheap, but there isn't a moment where I'm like, yeah, this CGI doesn't fit here. That CGI fits perfectly every time. In this show, absolutely not. It looks just awful, cheap. We're at a point where Riverdale managed to have better CGI for superpowers than Titans ever did, and that says quite a lot. Okay, let's end this goddamn disaster. Is this show good? No, absolutely not. This is the worst superhero show I have ever seen, and one of the worst TV shows ever, period. Awful, insulting, treating the viewer like a goddamn idiot, and aesthetically awful. This shit is a 0. Get me the fuck out of here.